Well, that sucked. But the good news is the Dolphins 2025 season is over, and now our work can begin.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Special thank you to each and every one of you who have helped to make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download Prize Picks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I'm going to pop open my latest C4 of the morning. It's 11 o'clock. I would care to not disclose how many energy drinks I've had already today. It is Monday, January 5th. The regular season is over. The Dolphins 2025 season is over. 7-10. And we are not going to spend very much time at all on the game that was played yesterday because I very firmly believe everything that needs to happen and everything that needs to be reacted to, the Week 18 game against New England with none of your best skill players playing, and that includes Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane, Darren Waller, and Jaylen Waddle. The starting quarterback was benched 3 weeks ago. Like, what did you expect? Minkah Fitzpatrick didn't play defensively. Chop Robinson's in concussion protocol. We got Cam Good and Quentin Bell playing like large chunks of snaps for you on the edge. What are you going to learn from a game like that, right? Like your information collecting window was already very well defined for what we felt, the pros and the cons and the concerns and the player development things and the coaching questions, the direction that the team needs to go. It's all been very well established before getting absolutely smoked by the Patriots in Week 18. And that's what happened, right? This is like you continue to have these snowballing, compounding errors where you start horrible on defense and then you kind of batten down the hatches and you force a punt, you block a field goal, and the offense has a couple of really nice drives where they move the ball and it's 14-10, and then you give up 30 yards in 30 seconds and it's 17-10 going into halftime. And there's just one little teensy-weensy little problem with being down a touchdown at halftime in New England in week 18. Team doesn't historically under Mike travel all that well. Mike McDaniel, head coach of the team. And they have had issues all year in the third quarter. And the third quarter, lo and behold, you get absolutely boat raced again with catastrophic decisions. I think it was 19 plays for 12 yards after the first possession of the second half of the Dolphins offensively. 19 plays for 12 yards. Patriots could have ran the ball till the cows came home. Nobody showed up with consistency. Now, there were individual player performances that off the TV copy and some of the early looks at the tape that I've had this morning that I respect how some guys showed up. But the overall collective effort, Cancun on 3, right? That's kind of the vibe of the game yesterday. So I can't sit here and I can't react to the game and how it was played and think anything that I felt coming into the game. And I wrote that story for A to Z Sports before the game was played. I said the Week 18 outcome for Miami should have absolutely no bearing on their decision on Mike McDaniel. And I don't think that it will. Whether they keep Mike McDaniel, whether they move on from Mike McDaniel, there will be other variables that go into that. And I think some of the clues for that were spoken on in the build-up, and I think Adam Schefter did the 8-minute long block of like the election board on election night where we're pointing at teams and this guy's safe and this guy's leaning safe, or we're leaning question here and this guy's on the hot seat and this guy's going, right? Like it is the end of year flurry, and that has already started. I have my phone on standby here and push notifications on for a bunch of folks in case we get hit with anything while I am recording the show. but I'm trying to do content that is not dependent on the news cycle. So it's a very fine line to walk. And if we get news today, I'll react to the news. We'll get into the show. I'm not worried about that. But Schefter on his pre-1 o'clock kicks went through Mike or the Miami and said, if the decision were made right now, Mike McDaniel would say, but there are other conversations to be had. And that leads me to believe that those conversations will be, who are you interviewing for your general manager position? What kind of conviction do or don't they have about Mike McDaniel? What kind of feedback do they have? What kind of candidates are they bringing? What other coaches are getting into the pool? We already have Kevin Stefanski was fired in Cleveland. The Ravens lost last night in the most heartbreaking way possible. Lamar Jackson's all ticked off on the podium. Do they move on from John Harbaugh, right? Like if you get that kind of influx, and we did that show two weeks ago. What are the coaches could be let go from teams across the league that would move the needle for the coaching market to help maybe spur and create more attractive options for what would be, in my perception, a definitive upgrade over Mike McDaniel relative to the unknowns of a first-time head coach, which I'm kind of played out on that front personally. Or a retread that's not in the league currently, right? Like who else can you add to the coaching pool? And we've already started to see some teams making some moves, and the Falcons wasted no time. We're going to talk about the Falcons in just a minute. But the way that Schefter talked about this job and Mike McDaniel's status has me led to believe, using logic and interpreting the words and reading between the lines, that if it were Stephen Ross's decision, Mike McDaniel will be back. But the fact that we are not definitively saying Mike McDaniel is back says that the general manager in the process of hiring a general manager is going to have some weight, and there's going to be some input on what needs to happen. So if you hire the GM and the GM says, look, Mike's done some nice things, and Mike has done some nice things. I know it's super popular to be down on Mike McDaniel. And if it were me making the decision, I would want a fresh start, blank slate, everybody all at the same time. I just kind of organizationally, philosophy-wise, I believe that. But if a GM were to be hired and said that and says, look, Steve, like, I know you've invested in Mike. I know there's some progress for the scheme that's been put in place here. We need better players to work it. We obviously need to find a different quarterback based on what's happened with Tua. Okay. Like I'm willing to rock and roll with anything. I'm not going to sit here and act like I have the book of the future and it is written in law and Sharpie, and that is how it is going to play out. I have my own opinions, but that's generally how I try to approach this show in general. Is I'll give my opinion, but then I try to present facts. I try to explain what they're trying to do and what it would look like if it worked and what it will look like if it doesn't. So the Schefter reporting has me believing that the Week 18 game does not matter in the grand scheme of things. Case in point, Achane sits, Minkah sits, Waddle sits. They got the Jays in late in the game as the Patriots got their own Jays in because they were up on you 4 touchdowns and took their foot off the gas. Kind of consecutive years of a disappointing ending to a play for pride scenario. But we got bigger fish to fry than a Week 18 game in New England, and New England's off to the postseason, and we'll see what they do with that opportunity. But they kind of come away and have a get-right opportunity against the Dolphins and take advantage of it, and Miami unfortunately does the thing that they've done way too often this season, which is compound a bunch of mistakes that snowball into a catastrophic third quarter, and I'll leave you with the stats. The Dolphins finished the 2025 season 17 games, minus 103 point differential in the third quarter, minus 103 points in one quarter across all 17 games combined. That has happened 8 times since 2001, where a team has had an individual quarter across their entire season with negative triple-digit point differential. 8 times since 2001. Do you know the math on that? There's 32 teams in the league, and they all play 16, 17 games a year. And there's 4 quarters in each one of those games. Like, you are talking the most exclusive of inept quarters of a game club that exists. The 25 Dolphins were joined by the 25 Jets in this stat. The Jets were minus 119 in the second quarter. The Dolphins were minus 103 coming out of halftime, where we had our orange slices and PB&Js and talked about halftime adjustments, and you got boat raced by 103 points. You also had a minus 1,005 yard net yard differential in the third quarter. Joke. The 2018 Bills and Cardinals, the Bills were minus 116 in the second quarter. The 2018 Cardinals were minus 108 in the second quarter. The 2011 Broncos were minus 121 in the second quarter. The 2007 49ers were minus 103 in the second quarter. The 2007 Rams were minus 107 in the fourth quarter. And the 2003 Lions were minus 100 in the second quarter. That's company we keep with that kind of performance coming out of halftime. And the Dolphins are one of only 2 teams with the 2007 Rams to have a negative point differential of at least 100 in one of the quarters in the second half of a game in the last 25 years. Got to get that fixed. Needless to say. We got a lot more to get into here on the show, so make sure you guys stick with us. Pete Carroll, sources, Pete Carroll officially fired. So when you got the push notifications on, it's going to be a wild ride today. And we get Dolphins news, we'll react to it. But right now, going to head to break and then come back and talk about the competition that is opening up on the general manager hiring front. That's next. Stick with us. Kicking off the new year, feeling good is the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is the easiest win that you can log for yourself. If you want to stay on top of it, your energy, mood, and focus can all level up. But let's be real, plain water doesn't always cut it. I like to drink for taste. And if I'm sitting here grinding through GM prospects or whatever else, Drip Drop comes in healthy because it's a doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that tastes good, helps keep your body and mind working together. You can think with clear focus, you could have better energy, elevated mood, and even that fresh skin glow. Drip Drop science-backed formula is trusted by firefighters, medical professionals, over 90% of top college and pro teams because it rehydrates you faster and more effectively than water alone. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now at dripdrop.com and use promo code Locked On NFL. I cannot think of a worse time for formal breaking news to hit than during an ad break, but I want to make sure I tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge, but with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. There's no drafts, no waiting. Just pick more or less and play your way. I love the flexibility and options of Flex Play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. If you are a Dolphins fan like me, you've probably experienced going to Hard Rock Stadium, paying $100 for parking, battling traffic to get in, and then sitting in your car for an hour after the game's over to try to leave. What if I told you there was a better way? I found the new app that I think could help you out on game days. Dibs is a platform that connects you with verified homeowners and businesses near the stadium who rent out their driveways and lots on game day. We're talking spots as low as $25. That's 80% cheaper than stadium parking. And you can get in and out way faster. Every host is verified and rated, so you know exactly what you're getting. Dibs is available for home games and events at the Hard Rock Stadium and is expanding across the state of Florida. Call Dibs on your spot today. Use code LOCKEDON20 for 20% off of your first booking. What is happening? My phone is blowing up. Is it just Pete Carroll? Okay, yes, just Pete Carroll has been dismissed. And every insider that I put push notifications is tweeting at the same time coming out of a break. So let me take a deep breath. Let me take a sip of the C4. Get a little caffeine back in the system. I'm very highly caffeinated, if you guys can't tell by watching or listening. But the Dolphins have competition on the general manager front. It was announced very quickly after Atlanta's game last night. They fired both head coach Raheem Morris and general manager Terry Fontenot. To Terry Fontenot, I say, good riddance. See you later. I feel bad for Raheem Morris. 2 years on the job, 8-9 both seasons. Fontenot completely fumbled the quarterback situation there in Atlanta with signing Kirk Cousins to the 4-year, 180 contract, and then drafting Michael Penix in the top 10. And Penix has not come together and had durability questions coming out from his time in Indiana. And lo and behold, got hurt again in 2025. Falcons, they played tough throughout the end of the season. They won their final 4 games, finished tied for first place. I think they were eliminated from the playoffs on December 12th and then finished in a 3-way tie for first place in the division in the NFC South. Must be nice to win 8 games and win your division. Could not be the AFC East. But Raheem was like just starting to get the defensive side of the ball turned around and fixed, and they're going to fire everybody. But that's not really of concern to the Dolphins. The concern is the Falcons now are completely restructuring their football operation, their front office. And they are bringing in Matt Ryan in a prominent role, kind of like what the Dolphins tried to do with Dan Marino all those years ago. It sounds like they're going to do that with Matt Ryan to be the president of football operations there in Atlanta, hiring a new GM. And this is interesting for Miami because they have been up until this point and probably are the Giants are not going to join these two teams. Giants ownership came out this morning with the formal written statement about Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen is going to stay on there. And you look across the rest of the league and ask yourself, what other GMs are getting let go? Maybe Monty Austinfort in Arizona, but I'd be surprised. I think he's done a generally good job drafting. And they invested all those assets into the defensive side of the ball, and the team flopped defensively this year. They were horrible, and Gannon's a defensive-minded coach. So I think there's a concern there in Arizona. So maybe Arizona opens up. The other 3 teams in the NFC West won 12 games. I don't think you move on from Jason Light. The Panthers have improved their win total 3 straight years and just made the playoffs. The Saints feel like they're moving in the right direction, and Mickey Loomis is like number 2 in Gail Benson's will to execute or will. And he's that well ingrained with ownership. Everybody in the NFC North had a winning record. Adam Peters in Washington, they were a 12-win team last year, very successful turnaround. The Giants gave the vote of confidence to Joe Schoen. John Spytek went to college with Tom Brady, played football at Michigan with Tom Brady. He's not getting fired after 1 year. The other 3 teams in the AFC West are in the playoffs. In the AFC South, the Titans are restructuring their front office structure, but they just hired Borgonzi last year as the GM of the team. He's getting more control. As the Colts came out and said they're keeping Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. Those other 2 teams are in the playoffs. Despite Baltimore's shortcomings, Eric DeCosta has been giving out $30+ million contract extensions to multiple players in the last month. He's staying. Pittsburgh won the division at 10-7. Don't think Omar Khan's going to be on the outs after they pull through and make the playoffs and get a home playoff game. The Bengals and Browns already came out and said Andrew Berry and Duke Tobin are going to stay in their positions of power in those football operations. It might just be the Falcons and Dolphins, which is great news for the Falcons and Dolphins. But if it's those 2 teams, how do they stack versus each other? Maybe we get another. Okay, it's just head coaching openings. How do those 2 vacancies and general managers stack up to each other? And what is what does the dynamic of Atlanta kind of turning the whole thing on its head? Does that help them versus competition for the top candidates with the Dolphins or not? We'll talk about that a little bit after the break and then get into where the Dolphins draft capital stands now that the official order is set for the top 18 teams in the draft order. That is next. Make sure you guys stick with us here on the show. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is sponsored by BetterHelp. The new year doesn't just require a new you. maybe just a less burdened you. We all carry things that weigh us down or hold us back, and therapy can help you identify what those are by offering an unbiased perspective to better understand your relationships, your motivations, and your emotions. It's where BetterHelp comes in, making it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist who can help you work through what is holding you back. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. You can sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. With over 30,000 therapists and an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars, with over 1.7 million client reviews, BetterHelp has served over 5 million people globally, and it works. That is, again, 10% off at BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. The NFL season is getting into the postseason chapter, and there's no home games for the Dolphins in the playoffs this year, but that's no problem because whatever events, local events, sporting events, or otherwise are near you, Game Time gives the advantage of buying tickets back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app is incredibly intuitive. You can browse, compare, and buy tickets in just minutes. One of my favorite features is the all-in pricing that you get, so there's no surprise fees when you put the tickets into your cart. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. How do the Dolphins and Falcons general manager vacancies compare? It's not like the Falcons have this vast advantage in salary cap space. Next year, the Falcons, with names like Kyle Pitts as an expiring contract, the Falcons have they have to figure out the Kirk Cousins contract and what they're going to do there. They've got Michael Penix as a young quarterback on the roster, but a guy who's coming off of a major injury. You're hiring a GM for a first-round quarterback that you didn't pick. Well, the Falcons have some good talent. It's also worth acknowledging the Dolphins went into that building and boat raced the Falcons earlier this season. So you play the game 10 times. How many times does each team win the game? I mean, who knows? Who knows? What I do know is the Falcons ranked 24th in cap space for 2026. The Dolphins ranked 28th. The Falcons do not have a first-round pick this year. They traded it for James Pierce, who had 10.5 sacks as a rookie. That's good. Not an every down player, but a pass rush specialist and an impactful one. But the Falcons' first pick in the draft order is at pick number 47. The Dolphins will pick twice before the Falcons pick once, including a pick at number 11. So is it better to have a young quarterback on the roster that you didn't pick, that you want to try to make it work with and retrofit? Or is it better to have no answer long-term at quarterback and both situations have a expensive veteran quarterback that you're probably going to be moving off of? With about break even and what the salary cap situation looks like. And one of these teams has one pick in the top 50 and it's at 47. I actually think there are comparables and pros and cons to both jobs. And playing in the NFC South is a pro for the Atlanta vacancy because 9 wins would have got you the division title, and it was not the first time in the last 5 years that 9 wins would have got you a division title in a home playoff game. It is absolutely disgusting to look at the history of some of the division winners in that division and their records relative to what the floor is for wins to win the AFC East. So Atlanta's got that going for them. But I think you can certainly hold up Miami and the complexities of the Miami job. I think there are similar complexities to the Atlanta job. And there's a little bit more overhead as far as the Penix situation. And like, at least in Miami, you can kind of position and posture yourself, and then you can choose to swing the bat whenever you want to swing the bat, whether that's on a free agent, whether that's on a trade, or whether that's on a draft pick, whether that's in 2026 or 2027. You're going to get a choice. I don't think you have free will in Atlanta for a quarterback situation. At least not right now. You can be sure that they're going to probably want to try to find a way to make that work. Which brings us to our last talking point on today's very awkwardly timed show, which I don't care about the game, but I'm very aware that there's probably going to be some notable news that comes down the pipe in the not too distant future. The Dolphins' current draft capital. The picks in the first 3 rounds through the first 18 teams in the order is static. The Dolphins still have some deciding to do with what happens with 2 of their 3 third-round picks. There's compensatory formula to be sorted out, but there's some complexities there that I'm not really going to get into, but I don't know that the Dolphins are going to get that 4th-round pick for Javon Holland because of some incentive pay that went out to a few players and changed the ranking of the contracts. 11th overall in the first round, 43rd overall, which is their 2nd-round pick, 75th overall. Those 3 are locked in. Unless the Dolphins are trading draft picks, those will be their first 3 scheduled picks, no matter what. Now, Philly and Houston, the Dolphins also have those 2 teams' 3rd-round picks. Right now, those are 87th and 91st. Of course, those 2 teams could both win or lose in the wild card round, and then they would advance, right? And for every round that you advance, it changes the block into a later block of picks that you could lock into. And if they played in the Super Bowl, that would be an absolute disaster because they'd get 95 and 96. Dolphins also have 4th round pick 111, 5th round pick 149, and 7th round pick 227. The 6th round pick went to the Giants for Darren Waller. So 11, 43, 75, 87, 91. 5 top 100 picks. Their 6th picks at 111. Their 7th picks at 149. The team's 3rd pick last year ended up being at 143. For perspective. They had 98. So, I mean, even still, you have 3 more picks between you when you pick at 43 and when your 3rd pick was scheduled to be last year. It's nice to have some assets to play with. Now, let's build a surplus and keep it rolling year over year. That would be the smart, wise, advisable, responsible thing to do, in my opinion. Whoever's the GM. I know I have my choice. It's John Eric Sullivan with the Green Bay Packers, who would be my preferred choice. Over on A to Z, I am doing a series of like 5 things to know about GMs. We've talked about a lot of these candidates already in the program when we did the hot board earlier throughout the regular season once we knew we had the general manager vacancy. We'll get into some GM stuff once we get the formal release of like who are the Dolphins submitting requests to interview with. Would very much like to know. When that comes out, we will do the content. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in right here, Locked on Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. Regular season is in the books. Close and turn the page. We're onward and upward. We're going to be talking about ways to fix this franchise in the months ahead. I'm looking forward to it. Hope you will come back and see us again soon. Go Fins.